Welcome to the Corporate Hangover. I'm your host, Tiffany Kennedy, and today we are sitting down with Mr. Joshua Thompson of the Thompson Tax Group. So, Joshua is a United States veteran who, after his service in the military, he transitioned to civilian life. And Joshua, to say that you hit the ground running is an understatement. He's produced or he has pursued multiple degrees, earning a Bachelor of Science in Accounting from California Lutheran University, along with degrees in Business and Economics from Moorpark College. And if that isn't enough, you're currently tackling a Master of Taxation degree at Golden Gate University. So, again, the breadth and the depth of knowledge that we are going to get into here today, I'm going to tell you, I'm the first in line. I'm super excited. I am already just over the moon about jumping into this. So, if you've ever felt anxious or nervous about starting your business because of the unknown, which for me, taxes was the unknown, or if you're planning to launch your business and you want it to get as much knowledge as you can so that you're set up for success, this is the episode for you. So, as a veteran to another veteran, first off, Joshua, thank you for your service and welcome to the show.
Yeah, Tiffany, listen, I appreciate it and I appreciate what you're doing here. Thank you as well for your service and everything that you've done. And I love that you're putting this together, community. There's not enough information out there for individuals. You'd be so surprised. Everyone gets so gung-ho about starting a business, do all this research, but then
Yeah.
if they don't realize or they don't know about the nitty-gritty of the stuff you need to be careful about, or the IRS or the state or the counties coming after you for certain things you may not be doing. So
Yeah.
thank you for giving me the opportunity to really come on here, discuss a little bit about us, what we're doing, and kind of how we're working with clients, and love to talk more about my journey and kind of how I went from, as you say, you hit the ground running, or we say in the Marine Corps, attack the hill, to where I'm at now and kind of keep moving forward. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what's really exciting about this for me is that you have already established yourself as an entrepreneur, but then now you've seen both sides of it. You know what it takes and what it's like when you're building something from the ground up. And for many of us, myself included, when I jumped in, and really I'll say when I started dipping my toe into entrepreneurship, one of the last things that I considered was the financial aspect, especially the tax piece. And so I remember that first year of waiting until the last minute, number one, to get all of my files together because I didn't know what I needed and what to do. And shame on me for not being more proactive. I'm sure you have more to say on that.
No, no.
And then number two, thinking, oh, well, I've stayed at a Motel 6. I can get this done. I know what I need to do. You remember those old commercials, right? And that
Yep.
is not how it works. If you don't plan, you are going to fail. You are going to fail.
Yes.
And so as we go on more into the show, I'd love to hear more about that. But from your own mouth, I'd love to hear about your background, maybe some of your experiences in the Marines, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So Marine Corps and the military, as I've learned, it's what you make of it. Like there's
Yeah.
some people that will join and they do not like it. They have the worst time ever. And there's some people that end up doing 20, 25, 30 plus years. And yeah, I've learned like I said, it is what you make it. As soon as I got out of high school, I went to the Marine Corps. It was one of those things where I thought I knew what I wanted to do with my life, but then I wanted that challenge. So the
Yeah.
recruiter came, everything just lined up perfectly for me. The recruiter came this was the end of my junior year. So I was in between junior to senior year. I
Hmm.
meet up, and then like 2 or 3 weeks later, I sign. I'm underage at the time, so my mom has to sign. My mom's crying, bawling, no,
Did we live
my
the same
baby.
life? What is this?
Right. And so I went in, joined, and I loved it. I ended
Yeah.
up being a 0621, so I was a field radio operator.
Okay. Right
I was in
on.
29 Palms, ended up getting stationed out in, the worst climate possible, Hawaii. It was absolutely terrible, all jokes aside. But I was in Hawaii for a while, ended up getting forward deployed to Okinawa twice, and Korea for a
Wow.
little bit. And it was a good time. Like I actually enjoyed it. Now there's times
Yeah.
where it's just like, this is tough. You're doing the 20K humps and whatnot, but in the total, when I look at my military career and in the time I was in, I learned the most about myself,
Yeah.
about life, and also about like what I'm into. And I really learned I'm into finances. Like I really enjoy business. I really
Right
enjoy
on.
finances and see how things work. So that's a little bit
Right
about
on.
like my military career and kind of where I started at right out of high school.
I'll be the first to agree with you. I think it's not for everyone. right? But for many, and myself included, and it sounds like yourself included, it's just one of the best decisions I ever made. And for me, I was the child of immigrant parents. And so coming out of the Bronx, I was just kind of like, I do not want to be in the Bronx for the rest of my life. I want to
Yes.
see what the world has to offer. Like you said, I want to learn about myself and what I'm capable of. And just that first step, I now see I kind of went behind my mom's back and spoke to a recruiter and then
Yeah.
maybe waited a week before I was going to basic to say, hey, I'm leaving. I'm heading out there. I got to go and
Mhm.
make something out of myself. But to your point, it was just one of the best decisions ever made. And so I love when I hear that because I know that was my experience. And to hear someone else also have that same experience, and then I can imagine just the skills and the discipline and the structure that you got there that then got you to this point. It's just a win. It's just a win.
It is,
Yeah.
and it sets you aside. I remember my first job out of the military. I actually went and I was working at Petco because it was back when I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I was starting
Oh,
my
right on.
climb up, right? And so I was working at Petco and I was becoming a dog trainer. It's like one of my first few days there. And it's like, all right, you need to sweep the floor. I'm like, all right, let's sweep the floor. I start
Hmm.
picking up all the heavy litter boxes and moving
Hmm.
it, and so I could get underneath around it, doing all the sweeping that you're supposed to be doing. It's field day. And the manager comes up to me and is like, I've never had anyone do that before. And in
I
my mind,
bet.
it's like, I'm just working. This is what you're
I
supposed
bet.
to do. So
I
you
bet.
definitely, your mentality gets a little bit higher as far as where you set that bar and how you handle things.
Yes.
And that's carried me from that job to another bit, job to the business I'm in now. And it helps me set myself aside from
Yeah.
the other individuals.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with you. Yeah, if you're going to do something, it's just kind of like you're going to do it 100% of the way,
Yes.
right? And don't even mention to me about field days. Got to clean out the Connex. You got, oh man, you're taking me
Oh
too far
yeah.
back. I don't want to go this far down memory lane now. Just like a high level.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. It sounds like you had a bit of a transition period coming out of the Marine Corps and then maybe pivoting into a corporate environment. What was that like? Or would you care to share some of those experiences?
Yeah. My energy levels was, I would say, probably one of the toughest things. How I just talk with people. Because, in the military, you say whatever you want to say when you're talking with your buddies and people you're talking with. The
Yeah,
higher ups come in, you typically just stop talking. But when you go from that to the corporate world, you have to start almost tiptoeing a little bit, choosing your
yeah,
words carefully with who you're speaking with. And I had to get back into that, like, okay, this is acceptable to say to these type of people, this is
yeah,
not. And I would say for me coming out of the military, getting into the corporate world, that was probably one of the harder things. It wasn't like terribly difficult, but it was probably one of the harder things on how to speak to people and reconfigure my brain on, okay, I teach a course like this when I was in the military talking about radios, and this is how I do it to get the class engaged. But when I
mm-hmm,
get into the tax side or something else, I'm speaking with the client, it's a completely different conversation. I have to bring my
yeah,
energy from here down to here. If I don't, tax can be boring, but usually if they're interested, I don't have to worry about them going to sleep. However, when I'm talking about radios and whatnot with people when I was in the military, it's like, I'm only here because my, CO told me to be here. I don't want to be here. I'm struggling staying awake.
yeah. And it's like you said, it's situational too. And
Yes.
one of the things that you learn as well is that in the military, at times it can just be based on your rank. So it's just kind of like, here's the information I gave you, execute on it. Why? Because I'm giving it to you. And so to your point, you have to start giving people the why and making sure that they understand the context, getting that buy-in,
Yeah.
even things like your tone and how you're presenting that message. Yeah, that makes such a huge difference. As you were in corporate America, were there any specific moments or was there any point in time that pushed you and said, you know what, I feel like between the time that I've spent in the military and now the time that I've spent building my career, maybe now's the time for me to take that leap and jump into entrepreneurship. And what was that like?
So I knew that I'm a fairly ambitious person. I put it like that.
Right on.
I knew as I grew up I was ambitious, but it didn't really hit me in the face until I started, I was really working on for someone. And I remember just speaking with him, and he's a great individual. Me and him are still really good friends today. But
Yeah.
I'm bringing all this to him, saying like, "Hey, listen, we should change this about the business. We should change that. And we should do this." And it was like the hardest of things to just change something small because they just like they want to do what they typically have done. And
Oh,
that's the
yeah.
saying in accounting and taxes, do Sally, same as last year. Don't change the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't change anything. Just leave it the
Yeah.
exact same salary. So I remember going to him and talking about this with a specific client. And I was asking, like, hey, if we change this on the return and we talk to the client, they approve this based on the new tax law that came out, it's going to
Hmm.
save them about $7,000. Can we do this? They're like, no, just leave it alone.
Really?
And for me, like, that's when I was like, I can't just leave it alone. I can't,
Yeah.
I can't just not do this. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this for the next 15, 20, 25, 30 years, just letting someone pay that much over than they need to pay, or letting them do this incorrectly when they should be doing it that. And that was the moment for me where it was like, listen, you gotta go off on your own. I didn't know
Yeah.
when it was going to happen, but I knew it was time for me to go off on my own at some point. Now I knew when my son was born and COVID hit, and I was like, it's either now or you're going to wait another 5 years to do this thing. My son was born, COVID was hitting, and I was like, you know what? I need to do this. This is something I need to do, or I'm going to regret it. And I look back and I'm like, best decision. One of the best decisions. Up there with joining the military, one of the best decisions I made timing wise.
Now, that's interesting, Joshua, because when you think about it, it's kind of like you went for the trifecta. All right, so now, we think of corporate America and it's just kind of like, or even, it doesn't have to be corporate America, but you have a W-2 job and you're just like, this is my security blanket. So
Yeah.
now you're saying, okay, I'm going to throw off that security blanket. COVID is in the room, right? And we're not sure what that even looks like. And then now you have a new family. So that all seems very daunting for someone that may find themselves in that similar situation. For you, you're just kind of like, you know what? I'm going to go out there and charge a path forward. But what are some of the conversations that you have to have with yourself to even just get to
Yeah.
that level of courage? You mind sharing a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Of course. So, it's tough
Yeah.
because you're looking at it and you want to, for me at the time, I was married. You want to develop this family and have all this, but sometimes you got to just take that chance, that leap of faith. And I know you see
Yeah.
it everywhere, that leap of faith, and sometimes you just got to take it. But I will say, you do not take a leap of faith without a plan, because
Yeah.
without a plan, what is it? I think Denzel Washington has the quote, or that's where I first heard it. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are taking that leap of faith and you don't say by this day number or this year or this mark, this is what I plan to accomplish. And if I don't do this by then, I'm going to either change this or whatnot. Give yourself guidance and a rule. Let your current self plan your future self what it's going to do. And that's
Mm.
one thing that really helped me is because when you're living in the moment, sometimes you can't
Yeah.
see the big picture. You're just living like,
It's
hey,
fair.
I know and I'll give you an example. 7 o'clock at night, time to turn on some, say, Breaking Bad. I'm going to relax, put on some Empire, Power, whatever it may be. And I'm just going to sit back and enjoy my time tonight. And because I'm thinking about right now in the moment.
Mm.
Instead, what I started doing is I literally have an agenda book right here and on my calendar where I'll write down, okay, at this time, this is what I need to accomplish. And I let my past self dictate what my future self's going to be doing. So that way I don't even have the
Yeah.
moment to say, it's time to relax and watch some TV. Because for me, I learned I don't need to relax as much as people need to relax. I don't need the
Fun.
9 hours of sleep. I need to get this done so I can feel comfortable, so I can make my 6 or 7 hours of sleep that much better because I'm not stressed out about
I
everything that's
like
going
that.
on. So that's the like really helped me as far as progressing and moving forward and getting over that hump is I let my past self dictate what my future self's going to do. And as I move, like time went on, I just
Hmm.
made my future self have more work and made it harder on it because if I didn't, then I just want to keep moving that goalpost. So I keep
Yeah.
working that much harder.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're just very intentional about how you're spending your time. And it's so interesting. And it tracks though, right? When you think about the fact that your expertise, your business, it's all about having to plan, having to be efficient with
Yes.
maybe not necessarily time, but my dollars, right? So that I can save the most. And so it really makes sense. And then I have a follow-up question.
Of course.
So what are some of the challenges, especially as now you're building the Thompson Tax Group? What are some of the early challenges you faced and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, revenue, right? Money,
Yeah.
money first. So that was probably the hardest thing for me because naturally I'm an introvert. I'm not a big fan of always talking to people and having the conversation. And it's so funny. I'll have like a lot of calls in the day, and in the day I'm just like drained. My wife's like, "You must have had a lot of calls today. You're wiped out." But it's just being that. introvert made it hard for me to transition to learn how to be the extrovert. In the business, as far as going out and getting revenue, you need to be the extrovert. You need to go talk to people because you may talk to 100 people and say 25, 30, 40 of them become clients. You still need to put in the energy as you do with the first one, as you do with the
Fair.
100th one. So for me, the way I overcame revenue is I did multiple things when I first started in the business. I purchased leads where I just find leads for people that are just looking for the cheapest service, really tax prep. And that was like the
Yeah.
first thing that put food on the table for my family. Like buying leads was my big number one. The second one I would do is I would have colleagues that they had too much work. So I would actually contract under them to help them out in their business as I was building stuff. It gave me a little more ways to touch on some more things I may have not touched on or learn something here and there, as well as speak with their clients where if they ever decided not to continue with them, as long as the colleague is okay with it, they come over here. If it just may be too expensive there, they come work
Yeah.
with me here. And just trying everything under the sun. Like I've tried social media marketing, I've tried Google ads and all that stuff. And unfortunately for me, I didn't have the best experience with it. So I learned it just had to be, the leads, the working with colleagues, and then started getting involved in my local chamber, my local community, helped me start building that clientele over time. And as someone once told me, and it's very similar in the financial industry as well, is the first 3 years you're just trying to get and take anything and everything. But as
Yeah.
soon as that year number 3, year number 4 hits, something just switches, and it's all of a sudden it just starts working out. And what typically happens is the clients you have start referring new clients. The people you met start referring you other people. The things that you're doing over here all of a sudden start working. You just have to get over that hump sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's tough, but if you get over it, it's worthwhile.
My grandmother used to use a term called stick-to-itiveness, right? And sometimes we walk away from something before we start seeing that fruit. And it's just kind of like you just need that one drop of water, or you need that one little thing that's your next step. So, to your point, yeah, part of that is knowing that you have to go in and there's going to be a length of time before you actually see that fruit come back. You see that money coming in, which I think is a bit of a good pivot into now how you help clients in your side of the business. For those that are looking to transition, or even maybe they're not transitioning fully out of their current roles or their W-2
Mhm.
jobs, but maybe they have a side hustle that they're looking to grow. What are some first year tips from a tax standpoint that you would give to those leaders?
Yeah, some of the first year's tips for discussing specifically tax is, you know, have a consult with a tax professional, whether 30 minutes or an hour, and just ask all the questions you can have. Because setting that foundation, you want to set a strong foundation as you get started in your business to succeed tax wise, legal wise, professional wise, as you
Yeah.
continue to grow. I can't tell you how many stories I've had where I've worked with clients who they had a small business. They went 3 or 4 years not thinking anything about taxes, and then they forget to file their tax return. Then they get ready to file their tax return for the past 3 years, and they 40, $50,000, like $200 in my bank account. I don't know what
Yeah.
to do here. So it's making sure you just set that foundation of, okay, yes, I know if I make $1,000, I talk to this professional, they tell me I need to put this aside, right? I need to do this. I need to do
Yeah.
that. Because without doing those things, you could get in a lot of trouble. And I'll share a story. There was a client I worked with many years ago who, unfortunately, they were working with a CPA that wasn't he wasn't doing the best of stuff, but the client wasn't aware of all the things they needed to have done. So they were in the state of California. They had multiple LLCs. I think at the time it was like 5 or 6 LLCs in California.
Hmm.
And the CPA they were working with didn't know California, you had to file LLC tax returns. They're one of the
Oh,
only
wow.
states that really require that, right? Well, California has an $800 annual LLC tax. Whether you make $1 or $250,000, you have to pay $800 per LLC. Well, she
Hmm.
hasn't been filing tax return. I think it was at the time about 5 or 6 years, give or take. Well, once she started coming on board us and we educated her and discussed all this, unfortunately, she had a ginormous balance
Yeah.
due for California. But it's one of those things where if she would have just had that foundation understood, someone would have just educated her. Unfortunately, the CPA at that time wasn't doing the best, but it can make all the difference to tell
Yeah.
you put some money away. And I will say, I'll leave you on this is, if you're that entrepreneur and you're making money, your net income is, so you have your gross revenue and then you have all
Hmm.
your expenses. And then after that is your net income after you subtract the expenses from the gross revenue. If you take that net income and then times it by, say, about 25%, depending on your tax bracket, just put that aside in an account for taxes. Just assume for worst case scenario, that's going to be where you're at. That's a good rule of thumb. Some accounts will say 30%, some will say 35. It all depends on your tax bracket.
Yeah.
Just put that away and do your financial statements monthly. Whether you're doing it or someone else is doing it, just do it monthly, because trust me, when you get behind, you will not thank yourself. It would be such a pain. So just do it monthly. You'll know where you're at. You know how much you need to put away, and just keep on moving forward with
You just read my mind because that was going to be my next question. Full disclosure, I did not do that when I started transitioning
that.
away from W-2 life. And so when you say behind, because I am that person that would also then say, how far is behind? Is that a month? Can I afford to be 3 months behind? I probably wouldn't want to be, right? Just, treating my business the way that it should be. But what's a rule of thumb-ish that we could use there?
Yeah, and I would say rule of thumb is a month, really.
Okay.
Monthly. If you get on a monthly basis, you're ideal. If you're a month behind, that means right now in January, we're doing and finishing November. We don't want to be that far behind.
Okay.
But you're not alone. There's so many clients we talk to who decide to do the bookkeeping themselves, but they don't know accounting. They may not know QuickBooks,
Yeah.
and they think QuickBooks is just taking care of everything by itself and you don't have to do anything check in. But the software is only as powerful as its user. If you're not using it properly, it's not going to be doing what it's supposed to properly. So you're not alone. There are so many clients who will do that. We'll bring a client on, I would say probably once or twice a year, where they're like, oh yeah, QuickBooks is doing everything. And I go in there and they have 1,000 transaction that hasn't been classified over the past 2 years just because they thought QuickBooks was handling it. So
Yeah.
you're not alone. Don't
It's not
worry
just
about
autopilot. Can't
that.
just set it
Yeah,
and forget it. And
exactly.
that's
So
fair.
1 month.
That's fair. And then you mentioned education as part of client onboarding. What type of educational resources do you provide? Or if someone's looking for that, can they come to you for is kind of the onboarding process or even outside of that?
Yeah, so I used to provide a lot more educational resources, like
Hmm.
download this packet and this and read that and learn
Yeah.
this. And I learned that only half the message is portrayed when
Okay.
providing that. And we've had in the past, we've had clients that will take that information, read it, receive 50% of it, think they're doing things correctly because, DIY, you do it yourself, which I'm a do it yourself type. Like if a window breaks, I'm going to go and figure it out. Right. But they'll do it themselves. And then 3 years will go by and then they hire that tax professional to find out, well, for the past 3 years, you've been doing it wrong. Say you have a 529 plan, right? They just changed the law where you can convert a 529 plan to a Roth IRA for your
Hmm.
child. So when they're 18, they can have that money in a Roth IRA and grow. Well, if you don't follow the guidelines, because some people may only hear what I just talked about,
Yeah.
but if you don't
Okay.
follow the guidelines where you need to have that account open for 15 years, you need to, you can only do a max of $35,000. You need to do this, you need to do that. If you don't look at those things,
Hmm.
then that whole plan just blows up. So I've learned actually having these conversations with clients is really what benefits them. And for our clients that decide to come on board on an annual plan, we meet with them twice a year. And twice a year, we're talking tax strategy, tax
Oh,
benefits,
wow.
what's going on in your life, what's your goals, where do you want to get to? And we'll incorporate a lot of the tax strategy into your goals and what you want financially. And we'll sit down and really go over it. If Tiffany, you had a business and you're looking at selling it right now, or selling in 5 to 10 years, I'm going to say, okay, Tiffany, let's put in a C corporation, because if you put it in a C corporation and hold it for X amount of years, you could have up to $10 million of it be tax free to you, and we'll have that conversation, right? But we're not going to have that conversation if I don't know that's what you want. So I can
Fair.
give you that pamphlet and you can read it, but if I don't know that's what you want and what you're trying to accomplish, we may not check all those boxes so you can take advantage of that. So that's why we kind of changed it a little bit to get to the point where it's more so a consultation where we're sitting down and talking, because
Yeah.
we pull the information so we can provide you with the tax strategies and benefits.
you are giving me such gems. And I'm immediately like, where do I go and sign up to become a client for Thompson's? And I mean this because I don't know that I have ever had this type of conversation with my tax professional. And so I will tell you, I had been one of those people that said, I'm a pretty smart cookie. I understand numbers. I can go ahead and do my own taxes. I cannot. And it's because I don't want to oversimplify, and I don't mean this in that way, but it's very different when now you have these other elements outside of just your W 2. And I'm sure there's times when I had just my W 2 job where I should have been meeting with a tax professional, right? Because I could imagine just in the few minutes that we've been talking, you have so much more of an understanding. It's like a technical expertise, right? That I would not have as a layperson. Where if I had these conversations with you, and now you understand what my goals are, now you understand what a better understanding of my financial picture. Now we're working together as a team. Right. And it's not just, hey, I just need to get this done because it's got to be done by this timeline, which is how I've always approached my taxes in the past. The government says I have to get it done by mid-April, and I got to do it, not thinking about, hey, how can I effectively plan? Is there some tax strategy that I should be aware of? And so with speaking with you, it's just kind of like the light bulb is really going off. This is more of a conversation with a trusted member of my team, as opposed to this is just something I've got to get done.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that.
That you're 100% correct, and that's kind of the mentality we have, because when we have those calls, we also bring on, like, if you have a financial advisor, you're working with Tiffany, or
Hmm.
anyone listening to this has a financial advisor or an attorney, we invite them, come on these calls with us, because we're
Yeah.
not always just talking tax. Like I said, we're talking your goals, we're talking
Yeah.
finance stuff, and a lot of times when we pull information out of you, you may be telling me, Tiffany, like, hey, listen, I have 3 LLCs and I have a holding company for my real estate. Plus, I have a trust set up. And, I'm going to talk about from the tax standpoint, but I can't
Yeah.
talk from the legal standpoint. And that's perfect where you bring your attorney if you want them to be on the call to talk. Financial
Yeah.
advisors love joining on the calls as well, because they also provide value on far as, me and you are talking about end of the year stuff, stock loss harvesting, where it's like, okay, the financial advisor, we have this stock, we have that, we could sell this, we're going to have this much in losses, it may save you this much in taxes. And that's where,
Yeah.
we could kind of come into it together and,
Yeah.
work together on it. But I've learned that those calls have way more value than coming to someone and say, here's your PDF tax return, tax plan, as we say. Go
Hmm.
out there and try and do it. I charge you $20,000 for this piece of paper, and you
Hmm.
go figure it out from there. And there's a lot of firms that have done that. And I'm so much different. I've said, hey, you come on board, $3,000. We're going to sit down twice a year. We're also going to do your tax return, and we're going to
Yeah.
meet again in the middle of the year for a tax projection. It just, the value we've been able to provide to clients is
Yeah.
astronomical.
At that point, it's more of an investment. You are investing
Exactly.
in part of your financial picture, right? You're not
Yeah,
just checking the box. And so I
exactly.
love that. I love hearing that. And so to anyone that's listening, it sounds like these are some of the things that when you're looking for a tax professional, you should start thinking about these things like how are they approaching this conversation with me? And again, light bulb just going off for me. What do we do? Or how do we facilitate these conversations? It would have never occurred to me to say, you know what, all right, I'm going to have my tax professional and my financial advisor on the call. So again, just dropping some amazing gems that the more that you understand how you can build the plan is the more successful that you're going to be, and who needs to be a part of that plan to help you get on your journeys. So what are some of the common misconceptions that you do see, or that you have to dispel from first time entrepreneurs, or even those that might have been at it for a while?
Yeah, definitely. So I would be, first and foremost, I'll be very careful about TikTok. There's some information there that just isn't always accurate, or they'll give a small portion of the information, but not the big pic, or they'll give the big picture, but not the nitty gritty that really matters for you. And just got
Yeah.
to be careful where you get that information from. Make sure the person are they licensed? Do they have a designation? Do they own a firm? How long have they been doing this? And ask yourself those questions before you take the advice, because I've seen some stuff from TikTok. It's just red flag for business owners. So I'll be,
100%.
other things for business owners, things that as far as tax wise to dispel is, an S corporation, this is one thing you'll always hear. An S corporation isn't always best for you.
Mm.
It's not always the best thing out there. Can it save you on taxes? Yes, but it's
Yeah.
not always the case. And it just depends on your situation. right? Some people, yeah, I say go S corporation, but I typically will not even recommend an S corporation to a business owner until their net income, once again, after all your expenses, what's left over, is at least $70,000. When I start saying, okay, yes, an S corporation. The reason I say that is because with an S corporation, there's, and I don't want to get too much into that, but there's more
No, you're
expenses that
perfect.
arise when you're an S corporation that when you're not an S corporation. So you want it to balance out
Got
with
it.
tax savings. And I see it usually around $70,000 net income. It could balance out. But I think that's an S corporation is not always the route to go. Now, you set up your LLC. Your LLC is a state entity level. The IRS does not really care what an LLC is. It basically says, tell me how you want to be taxed.
Yeah.
This is something that happens a lot where I'll pick up a new client and I'm like, okay, what entity do you have? What is your business in? And they're like, it's in an LLC. I was like, okay, great. How's it taxed? And they're like, it's just an LLC. And I'm like, it's one of those technical questions that I know it needs more, but a lot of times entrepreneurs don't know there's more to that. When you're an LLC, that's more so at the state level because you set it up at the state. But the IRS really says, okay, cool, you're an LLC.
Yeah.
How do you want to be taxed? Do you want to be taxed as a, kind of a single member or disregarded entity where it goes on your personal tax return, Schedule C? Do you have multiple members that, you and a wife or you and a spouse or you and a friend are together? If you have multiple members, you could be considered a partnership. Do you want that LLC to be considered a S corporation or a C corporation? This is why a lot of people love LLCs because it has the flexibility to pick between which one you want to be. There's rules on how often you can switch and the 5-year thing and whatnot. We're not going to, we won't get too much into that during this call, but I would say be mindful and careful of the LLC and where you find your information and where you
Yeah.
get it. If you started a business, it may be worth just going, finding that tax professional, pay them $300 to $600 or even $1,000, depending on who they are, an hour to really just give you what you need because it can
It sounds
save
like
you
it.
thousands over the course of even the first year, second year, or the lifetime of the business.
It sounds like it's just worth the investment, right? Like you're getting ready to make one of the biggest leaps in your life. Take that time, make that investment, get informed or educated. And I think that just enough said, right? Just 4 things that you need to do. So I want to pivot a little bit really quickly because I'm also fascinated by this as well. So we touched a little bit on mindset and some of the things that you do to be very intentional. You're also still pursuing a master's degree. You have family life. You're a business owner. How do you prioritize your personal growth and professional development as an entrepreneur? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's tough. And I'm not so this is maybe very controversial, but I'm not a big fan of kids. So, I have 2 children, right? And I love enjoying them, love hanging out with them, enjoy the time on the weekend, all this great stuff. And, we have a good time. But for me,
Yeah.
like I get burnt out fairly quick if it's just like 5 hours straight. Like I need a break. I need to go get some work
Yeah.
done. And if I'm not getting work done, for me, I'll get anxiety that I'm not accomplishing anything and moving forward in my life.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I would say like work-life balance is I work a lot. Like
Hmm.
I'm constantly working. My goal at the end of every day, though, is to be done roughly by around 4:30, 5 o'clock, spend some time with the family. And once everyone goes to sleep, maybe say 8:30, 9 o'clock, I go back and get a little bit more work done during tax season. After tax season, usually take the time off.
Seems fair.
But it's just, the work-life balance for me, it's all right now in my life, it's actually more work than it is family. I know a lot of people are not big fans of that, makes them think I'm sad, but that's kind of where I'm at right now because that's what my mind, my family needs right now. And then as time goes on, which we're getting closer to, it will probably adjust more so back to, okay, now we're doing more family oriented stuff. Now we're doing more of this, more of that. So it's definitely a balancing act. I will say you don't have to be like everyone else to try and make it 50-50 or make it, everyone else make it seem like their threshold is. Do what feels comfortable for you, works for you and your spouse, with you and your children, with you and your business. And if you need to go 90-10 for 2 or 3 years to get this thing going off the ground, wonderful. At the
Yeah.
end of that, a few years, go to 50-50, then maybe, 70-30 and whatnot. You just have to play with that and to see what really works with you and
Yeah.
discuss it with your spouse.
It's a learning journey for so many of us. And there's nothing controversial about any response because we're all different and we have different
Yes.
triggers. We have different inputs, outputs needed based on situation. So I love hearing that. And that says to me that you're very honest and understand who you are, right?
Yeah.
And what you need. And so then you're able to communicate that in a way that works for you and for those that are in your life.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah, and you put it perfect. I could said it better. So, and one tip I've learned is what I'll give either, this is kind of really for anyone. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a W-2, is, and I know some people may be against this, is every either Sunday or Saturday night when
Hmm.
everyone's asleep or when I have some time to myself, I take 30 minutes or an hour and I just answer emails. Like
Right
that's
on.
just because it makes Monday feel less like a Monday. It makes it
You're more
so much
prepared.
easier when Monday comes around. You don't spend the first half of your day answering emails and you have all 20 more come in. That's one tip I've learned over probably the past 2 years, and it's made I don't get as stressed out on Monday because all this stuff to do. It's just I do a little bit more on Sunday or Saturday. It makes
Yeah.
Monday less of a Monday.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And thank you for that, Joshua.
Yeah.
So, last couple of questions I have for you here, and
Sure.
I'm excited to hear this. You mentioned being very ambitious, and I would love to hear how success or what success looks like for you now versus when you first started on your journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to sit back and think about that one. So
No problem.
I would say success when I first started was having a client, like just putting money in the bank account, right? That was success for me when I first got started. I just any sort of money. Like I don't care how hard I have to work for it. I don't
Yeah.
care if I had to put in 8 hours of work to make $400 or whatever it may be, or $300 with all my expenses. It's just that was success to me. It was a lot smaller threshold. Now my success to me is like, okay, is my family having, meeting all the needs for my family, accomplishing things that I need to have. Success is for me is a moving target. It's not like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm here and now I'm successful. It's more so along the lines of, being, what's the saying goes, be proud but never satisfied. So whenever I get to the point where like, okay, I'm way better than I was last year, which is kind of at the point I'm now. Okay, now what's my success going to be next year? For me right
Yeah.
now, for my goals, like, all right, I want to get my financial education designations. I'm doing that course and getting that taken care of. I want to read a few more books, look into a few more tax strategy and codes for clients. I want to pick up X amount of clients this year, X amount of revenue. And that's my success for the year. But it's so hard for me to say what success will look like 5, 10 years from now, because maybe I change my mind. I love children. I have seven, like my brother, we have a lot of kids. Let's say I get to that point and success may be a lot different than it
Yeah.
is now. But I would say for me, success right now, that's what it's looking like.
Yeah. And you're not resting on your laurels. Oh, I achieved this and now I'm good. Right.
Exactly.
And so that's a fair point in that as you get to this one target, now you're moving the goalpost. Now you're setting a new set of goals, a new set of KPI. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but I know we're getting close on time. So
Another
I
one.
would love to have another conversation with you. This has been so edifying. So, Joshua, can you recommend a book or a podcast or a resource that has helped you on your journey to entrepreneurship that you think would benefit listeners?
Yeah. So a book I really like is I'm just gonna throw it out there. Is everyone already knows it? Think and Grow Rich. That one helped my mindset because I
Okay.
know, like, I always desired, but I didn't really know how to, put that in what is it, fruition, how to go after and get
Yeah.
it. Right. So Think and Grow Rich really helped me say, okay, this is what I want. I want this much in real estate. Okay, every day I'm going to analyze 3 to 5 deals. If I analyze 3 to 5 deals every day in the course of the next month or two, there, of course, I'm going to get a deal that actually makes sense. And
Right.
that, for me, that kind of example how Think and Grow Rich helped me. But a book I really enjoy is,
Mm-hmm.
and it may be back there, but I have a printout because I refer back to it fairly often. It's called Decisive, not Decisive Workbook, but just Decisive, and it's by
Oh,
Chip and Dan Heath. And it's a wonderful book about making decisions in business, and it makes you realize that a lot of times you don't have option A or option B. Your just mind is just stuck thinking that those are my only options. a lot of times option C and D available, and it tells you how to break it down to get rid of those options to determine what other options you may have. And I'll give you a quick example because I know I'm long-winded, so I apologize
No,
to
I
everyone.
listen, I am not complaining. I'm not
But
complaining.
I was at a point where we were looking at hiring. No, there. I was working with a land investor, and I was part of this group of land investors and whatnot. Something else I had going on,
Hmm.
and this individual was looking at. They had a virtual assistant that they had on board that they were doing some text messaging with, and some laws were changing, so they really had to get text messaging was going away. And they're like, I don't want to let go of this employee because it's so good, but text message is going away. Do we just
Yeah.
let them go? Or do we just keep them doing text messages until we get basically sued? And I had the conversation with the gentleman. I was like, well, why don't you try and repurpose them? Like, you don't have to let them
Hmm.
go. They don't necessarily have to do text messaging anymore. Repurpose them for something else. Maybe it'd be cold calling or handling admin stuff in the background. But a lot of times our mind, I know right now to me and you, it seems like, well, yeah, that's a no-brainer. But when you're in the thick of it, keep them, let them go. Keep them, let them go. Keep doing the
Yeah.
text messaging or just not. And sometimes there's an option in the middle where it's like, okay, this is how we can do it. And that book talks more about seeing those options. And like I said, I have the workbook here just so I can quickly refer to like things when I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it, when I'm on calls, certain things like that. Wonderful, wonderful book.
I'm going to check that out for myself. So thank you for that
Of
recommendation. I
course.
love that.
Of course.
Well, Mr. Thompson, Joshua, what a great conversation. I truly mean that. And I cannot wait to speak with you again. I think that there's just going to be so much that I have to learn. And like I said, just you dropped so many gems in the course of this conversation. And we've only been at it for an hour. And so I know that there's so much more that you have to share. And so if you're listening to this podcast, I encourage you to go over to Thompson Tax Group. That's thompsontaxgroup.com and connect. You can find Joshua on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. Did you want to speak on that a bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm more than happy. But first, I
Yeah.
want to say, Tiffany, thank you again for having me on board and even doing this for everyone that's listening. There's going to be so many individuals that you just change their life, their situation
Well, thank you.
at the end of the day, whether it be tax related stuff, mindset related things in the future, or just even just having someone there that talks with you, whether it be weekly, monthly, giving you information as you grow your business. So thank you for doing this and having
Thanks.
me on. It's a pleasure. Yeah, if anyone wants to look more into us, thompsontaxgroup.com, read about me, on what we have going on. Feel free to look at us on YouTube. We're getting a little bit more active. We're going to be posting more stuff on YouTube and doing some shorts on Instagram and Facebook. But if you have any questions, my big thing is I'm big on communication. So
Yeah.
if you reach out to me, you email me, you reach out, I'm going to get back to you fairly quickly. I cannot stand the colleagues that I work with are other financial professionals or attorneys that I'll email and a week or two goes by and they finally email me back. And I'm like, at that point, I don't even remember what I asked you.
Yeah.
So for me, it's big on communication. If you
Yeah.
need something, let me know. I may not be able to answer tax specific questions, but we can kind of figure out where we can go from here and how we can help out, or if I can point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will link all of your contact information, social media, as well as the website in the show notes so that anyone who's listening, you have access to Joshua and you can get the help that you need. So, again, Joshua, thank you for your time today. It has been such a pleasure. And to everyone that's listening, Happy New Year. And I'm wishing you success as you step out.
Likewise. Thank you.
Of course.